What's up guys, Zach Dowdy here, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite way of shooting on film with the Super 8 camera. So this is actually the first video camera I ever owned, not just film but digital, all over camera. My dad got it for me from a garage sale. Actually, I was just looking in this one and it has the name of William G. Cheney. Might have to find him. Long story short, I love this camera. It's my favorite camera to film on. I've tried tons of different Super 8 cameras. I love them all. This happens to be my favorite one. It's the same one that my dad originally got me when I was 15 years old. I actually have a tattoo of this very exact camera on my arm that says "Make it happen" right here. Make it happen. Exact model. My friend Ace of the Crow III did that. He's amazing. Check him out if you're into tattoos. You want to get some tattoos, you're in San Diego, check Ace of the Crow out at Tower Tattoo. But anyways, we don't need to dive into the camera specifics. This is going to be more of a beginner's guide to how to start with Super 8. And if you already do film Super 8, there might be a couple tips and tricks in here that help you with your current workflow. So let's get into it. The first thing you want to do is plan your shoot and figure out how much footage you actually need for your Super 8 edit, movie, whatever it is you're making, feature film, Hollywood films. Let's do this. So yeah, basically you want to use this little app that I found recently, very handful. It's called the Kodak Cinema Tools. And so we'll do a little overview right now of how that works. So once you download the app, you can actually go into this film calculator. And the cool part about this film calculator is you can put what your end video length should be. So say if you want to make a 10-minute video, you go in here and select 10 minutes. Boom. After you select 10 minutes, it shows you what length of film you need, how much of that film you need. You can even set your frames per second. So say the end result is 24 frames per second, it tells you need 180 feet of film. This is a really good starting point. This is a great way to just kind of get an idea of how much film stock you need to produce how much footage you're looking to achieve. Great little tip, little tool. You don't have to buy the film through here. You absolutely can. This is just more of a way for me to kind of calculate how much footage you're gonna need and kind of budget out your Super 8 film. So before we go into the actual film stock, like I said we're gonna do just now, we're actually gonna talk a little bit about Super 8 history, just to give you a little bit of backing. And if you don't want to know any about the Super 8 history and just want to get into the tips, feel free to fast forward through this part and get through the tips. So in 1965, the Super 8 camera was actually released to families worldwide. All you needed was 2 AAA batteries to operate it. Before this, there really was no like home video camera, so this was pretty much the first family home video camera that Kodak released. Then about 30 years later, in 2012, Super 8 was definitely on the verge of dying because Kodak filed for bankruptcy. Pretty much everyone thought, well, this is the end of Super 8. But wait for it. Luckily, in 2017, Hollywood Films made a supply agreement with Kodak Film, making us have hope for the Super 8 film forever. Thank God, because I love you, Super 8. So long story short, Hollywood Films saved Super 8, kind of saved film in a lot of ways because they said, no, we want this. So thank you, Hollywood Films, for doing that. Now, most recently, Kodak brought back the Ektachrome in 2018, I believe, when they came out with it for the Super 8, and that's the most color vivid, great, punchy, super contrasty type of film. So if you're looking for that daylight, juicy fill vibes, all those colors, check out the Ektachrome. Highly suggest that. Kodak in general is definitely pushing film altogether. They have the Kodactory, it's an amazing podcast all about film and creators. There's all sorts of different outlets that Kodak's doing right now to really push film. So last thing before we get into the film stocks, I'm sorry, you can keep fast forwarding. They're actually coming out with the digital version of a Super 8 camera. It sounds super crazy. Essentially, it's going to be a Super 8 camera that does everything that a normal Super 8 does, but then it processes it to a digital file within the camera, then you can pop it into your camera or into your computer. Sounds insane. I don't know how they're doing this. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check out that camera. I've been waiting for it for at least 5 years, maybe longer. Kodak, please release that camera. There's a nice hefty price tag on it. Of course, the money that you would save with processing everything else, it probably makes sense. I mean, essentially you can make a whole movie on a Super 8 camera now. That's gonna be amazing. I think Girl Skateboards actually made a pretty rad edit. I'll put that in the description. You can check that out with their Super 8 camera that Kodak is hopefully releasing in the next year. 3 primary types of film stocks for Super 8. We're just gonna go over the basics. So there's color negative, there's black and white reversal, and then there's color reversal. What reversal film does and what it is, it comes out as a positive, so you can actually play it back as intended to. So I'm gonna save you tons of heartache, hopefully, because I went through this and I was super bummed. I shot a whole roll of film and it was tungsten, but I was in the daylight and I had it on daylight mode or something or another. I just didn't know this rule of thumb, and all the footage is ruined. So, rule of thumb, tungsten film should just be on the bulb option. No matter if you're inside, outside, no matter where you go, just keep it on that option, bounces it out. If you have some sunlight film, you want to keep it on this option. I know it seems kind of self-awareness, but it doesn't matter what kind of environment you're in, whether you're outside or you're inside. This is more depending on the type of film stock you're using. So good little thing to know before you start filming. Make sure you match those two things up. Something to realize is really important, especially if you're using Super 8 to combine it with other digital edits and stuff like that, is that Super 8 films in 18 frames per second. A lot of cameras do have the option to film from 8 frames per second and 18. Highly suggest you to stay with 18 frames per second. It's going to look the most native with your other footage. Something to also consider is that with a 50-foot cartridge, you're going to get about 3.5 minutes of 18 frames per second footage. Once you compress that down, that's about 2.5 minutes of digitalized footage. And when I say compress that down, I mean when you change the frame rate over to 24 frames per second to match it up with the US Broadcasting National Standard. There's tons of videos online to why you should film in 24 frames per second, so we're not going to get into that. Essentially, that's about $35 per minute of footage that you're working with Super 8. And now the numbers that I'm talking about are with the Pro 8mm Super 8 kit, because we can't compare everything right now. This video is going to get way too long. So right now we're just going to base it off the Super 8mm film kits. And in my experience, it's the cheapest route to go if you're not processing, developing, and scanning and doing all yourself. Obviously, the advantage of the film kit is that you don't have to worry about any of the processing or anything. You just worry about the image, the story, what you're capturing, the video itself, and then you're sending it off, and then you can send it to the editor or edit yourself. But the idea is that you can focus on the stuff that makes you a good creator and not have to worry about developing, unless that's something you're into. If you're into developing yourself, that's right. I always wanted to do that. Let me know if you got a video that will help me do that. We went over the introduction of Super 8, we went over a little bit of history, went over the film stock, and then the film rates. Now what I want to talk about is the exposure. So with Super 8 cameras, I think it's better to probably overexpose than underexpose, because if you overexpose it, you can go and bring it down the exposure a little bit in editing, where if you underexpose it, it's really hard to bring back that footage and it's pretty much useless. A lot of the cameras, automatic metering exposure works really well. Some do have an EE lock on Super 8 cameras, so you can actually lock the exposure, so wherever you go, keeps the same consistent exposure. Really great tool. This camera in specific, the Canon 310XL that I love so much, does not have that feature, unfortunately. So now that we got a little bit of history down, our frame rates down, exposure down, a couple other tips and tools, now let's talk about, so you got everything in, you're ready, you're on the shoot, you're ready to go. First thing I like to do is zoom all the way in. And I like to use the manual zoom. I don't really use motored zoom. I use the manual zoom, just because I find with these Super 8 cameras, it's just so much more punchy. Like, you can punch in, punch out real quick. And if you want to go slower, you can go slower. With the motor, you can only go so fast. And that's the beauty of these, like, you know, very functional cameras, that you can just punch in and punch out. You might as well utilize that, because you can't really do that on other cameras. So yeah, first thing I do before filming anything is I zoom all the way in. I'll dial in the focus, make sure whatever is farthest away is in focus, and then I zoom all the way out. And then after I zoom all the way out, I'm ready to record. And I'll do that pretty much with every scene, just to make sure that everything stays sharp, unless you're looking for a blurry image, which sometimes you are looking for. Again, it depends on the image that you're trying to produce. That's a good rule of thumb, just to keep everything in focus. So yeah, that's just a really quick overview of the Super 8 camera. Hopefully give you a couple tools to get out there and shoot it. The Cinema Tools app, the frame rates, your film, the color, film stock, knowing which white balance. Essentially, this is your kind of your white balance, not really based off where you are. Knowing that it's just 2 batteries, that's all it takes. Talk about the film, type of film that goes in there, and we talked about focusing and zooming. That's pretty much the basics of it. Hopefully this video has sparked some motivation and get you out there and shoot on Super 8 film. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'm gonna leave you with a quick little Super 8 edit. Mash. Okay, so we've covered the basics of, what did we cover?